Hi, everyone. Welcome to the National Parents Union for tonight's nightly restorative check-in. It's Friday, August 7th. I can't even believe how much time has gone by this year. I think all of those memes around like what August, well, probably March, June, July, August, and September have looked like are appropriate because so much time has passed and like we don't even know how to like mark all of these shifts and changes. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Anjali Laffery. I am here in Arizona and it's threatening to rain. And I actually shouldn't even use that word threatening. It's the most beautiful thing when you live in the desert and it's the summer and there's the potential for rain. But anyway, this Sonoran desert on this autumn land, I'm just really grateful to be in this space. I really love where I live. And I'll get into actually some of the connections because of moving here is why I met our guest who we're bringing on today. So, like I said, this is the nightly restorative check-in. This is the brainchild of Marisol Quereda Rerucha. So her conception of the show was just thinking about, people needing to kind of check in, reconnect, and just have somebody do that social emotional check for us on a Friday evening. I always think about, for me, Friday evenings, right? If I could be doing whatever I wanted, although I love doing this on a Friday night, but after this, right, what I want to do is I want to chill, right? I want to watch TV, I want to get some good food, and I want to be with my people. So because of that, that's probably why I've chosen to bring my people, right, on the show, so that if I'm going to be working, I still want to get a piece of that. I originally was a guest on Marisol's show, and she brought me on because I'm a psychologist, a hypnotherapist, and also a professor. On the first show, I shared a breathing pattern titled 478. And I want to maintain the integrity of her show. She hosts the show on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I come in on Fridays. So we're going to go through that 478 breath. The way that it works is I will count it out for you. You are inhaling for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7 seconds, and then releasing your breath for 8 seconds. And we do that 4 times around. If you want to add another layer to this, because I know some of you are pros and you've been doing this for a while now, you can actually think about, as you're inhaling, breathing in all of the good things that you desire. So for example, a sense of peace, a sense of calm, right? And then when you exhale out, send out all of the things that you wish to be rid of, right? Tension, fear, uncertainty, right? Whatever it is. I will not articulate that part, but it's just an important layer, actually, from my hypnosis background, that I like to bring in when we do this exercise. If at any point you get lost, or you just feel your first time through, it can feel a little awkward to breathe at this rate, just kind of go back to your normal breathing pattern and then try to catch back up and rejoin us on the inhalation, right, for the 4-second count. Okay. I highly recommend that you close your eyes. The reason why I recommend that is so that you don't get visually distracted, right? All of these relaxation techniques, right? All of these ways of relaxing, sorry about that, all of these ways of relaxing are really subtle, right? And so we can easily kind of be pulled out of our sense of relaxation if we don't have our eyes closed, because that's one of our primary senses. And so information will easily pull us out of that field. All right, enough talking. Let me get myself set and centered for a second, because it goes better if I'm in a good space. So go ahead and just start by picking the position that you're going to be in, right? Uncrossing your body, getting comfortable. And here in a second, start to inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go back to your natural breath. That actually feels really good. Like I always tell you guys, I get a sense, right? I get a sense of if it was good for you or not, right? If it actually relaxed you or not. And at the end of that one, I was actually able to take a deeper breath. It actually is telling me also, I think I'm walking into this pretty calm. So, all right. So, and actually this slowdown in my pace, I'm actually feeling your slowdown. So I want to match you and match your energy. All right, so let me finish introducing myself before we bring on our guest. I am originally from Southern California, although now living in Arizona. But I've lived here for quite some time, right? It's been since 2004, and that's actually where I met our guest. My father is Cuban, so we are from Taino, Arawak descent and have African roots. My mom is from Guatemala, so we're from Maya territory. And you all have met my brother and sister. They were some of the first guests that I brought on. I'm a mom to a beautiful 20-year-old daughter. Oh, gosh, who's going to be 21 soon in November. And I'm also a widow. My my community identity is also really important to me. So I'm a member of the Siwa Pali Collective. We are a group that focuses on Indigenous mothering. And so we support women, we like to say, from womb to tomb. So again, I will always start with that because it's important to me to ground who I am. Who I am is not just my individual efforts and successes, right? I come from a long line of people's traditions, and I have a lot of connections and responsibility, accountability to people who I love. So I will always start that way. Okay, so let's bring in our guest, Mr. Andre Hamp. He is an assistant professor of medicine and infectious disease. Hey, let me finish your intro here. At Georgetown University, he specializes in infectious disease epidemiology and data science implementation. I promise we'll define that. He's also a licensed professional counselor in the District of Columbia. Hi, Trey.
Hi, how are you doing, Julie?
So excited to see you if you can't tell. So excited. Yes. So I always, this is that nightly restorative check-in. So I really want to know, right? How are you? How are you? How is your life going?
So life has been really interesting lately. I think that it's been the yin and the yang in regards to kind of swinging back and forth. And so I think that there are two things I would say describe my life right now. Is one, I truly feel blessed to be where I am doing the things that I'm doing. At the same time, there's a weight. It does feel heavy. This has been a very long uh, 4 or 5 months in my profession for the world, but especially doing the type of work that I've been doing for quite some time. This has been heavy, and so
Yes, and that's exactly what I thought about when you said heavy, is that your work right now is so important. And so actually, let's start with your professional side. So yes, people can easily wrap their minds around professor, right? But they understand infectious disease and that you're probably in high demand right now. But what is epidemiology?
epidemiology. And so, the basic definition is the study of disease. And so, disease and how it navigates and permeates throughout a population. And so, it's really population based and understanding any particular, especially infectious disease, what the etiology of the disease is and then how it navigates. But my kind of more layman's definition is we're disease detectives. We want to know the what is it, who is it affecting, and then how do we then mitigate that through prevention efforts. And so epidemiology is kind of the core of the public health spectrum for me in regards to navigating that.
And I'm glad you actually used the word etiology, because I think before before we came on, right, I was preparing and saying, hey, I definitely want us to define this term for our audience. I think that's what I was confusing a little bit of epidemiology with etiology, because in my mind, epidemiology is what are the origins of disease, and that is one aspect, right? You schooled me. That's one aspect of epidemiology, but epidemiology, right, is so much bigger. And you and I are laughing at like the schooling comment, because that's how we met, right?
We did.
So I don't even know. I remember walking into.
I remember too. We're going way back now.
Well, let's tell the story of how we met. So we met in graduate school, and that actually connects to your other role, right? That you're a licensed professional counselor, right? So I'm a psychologist. Trey and I met here in Arizona in 2004. Wow. And we were both starting our doctorate programs together in counseling psychology. And so that is where we met, but also where our relationship started. And we became homies, you know, and I've been saying and making fun of this, that like, it's actually a little challenging for me to have you on the show and to look at just how grown up we are, because I know Trey, like, Andre Hamp, like, yeah, I know him too, but I know Trey. So I remember that I walked into a room, we were having kind of like an orientation for our cohort. Okay, I'm trying to get the story up. And you on the low had stalked me. You on the low were like, I already know you. I already know you. I already saw your profile. So if for those of you who are young, pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook, there were things like MySpace. There were affinity pages like Mi Gente. Was Black Planet? Is that what it was called?
Black Planet was, yep.
Asian Avenues. Y'all can tell where. Anyway, doesn't matter. Asian Avenue. And so that's what you had done. You had stalked my page, and you just read me. You just told me everything that I was. So that is how I think of you, Trey.
And you know what? That's still me to a degree. I'm not Facebook stalking or IG or all of that. That's still, I just got schooled in reverse on how to, navigate Facebook as much. My folks who know me may think that I'm on there a lot, but I really don't know. But I think that the one thing that sticks out about your story the most is that time and space in life of really wanting to make a connection. And so there were two parts. There was like, who's my competition? I'm 22 years old at that time. I'm graduating from undergrad and I'm getting ready to possibly get into a doctoral program. So I'm like, who is my competition? And also who are going to be my allies? And I can say that strongly today. Those folks who are my allies in 2004, 2005, 2006, during my time there, they're still my allies today. And so that I can definitely say. And so I'm glad to be here.
That's so sweet. No, and actually, we're all kidding aside. For a second, I was like, "Who is this person?" But then afterwards, it made me feel seen. And that's not a way that I've always felt. I would say, in a lot of times in my life, I haven't felt seen. So no, I appreciate it, and it was easy to receive it as being kind of something warm. And yeah, a beautiful friendship beyond who we are as academics, right? Evolved. In fact, I would say we've done more than non-academic connecting. Okay, but to that point, yes, so we're hearing, right? We're hearing who you are professionally. You're also a professionally licensed counselor, right, there in Washington, D.C. But I also want to give you the opportunity to just kind of describe and explain who you are outside of your professional roles, right? Because I know your family and where you're from is really important to you. So tell us about that part.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think that, there are identity pieces that people see of me, or pieces that come out probably a little bit more. And so I identify as a very proud Black gay man and I navigate, spaces of intersectionality every day. And so it's really important for me to also see everyone else's intersectionality. So that's a core component of who I am. But I would say when you said, friends and family and home, I'm here in Washington, D.C., but Anjali, you are home for me. And it's an interesting space to navigate. My family moved to Arizona, probably one of the first Black families in Arizona in the 1930s. And so we have a very unique story. The love of my life, the woman of my life who passed away 2 years ago, who I know is here right now, was born in Phoenix, Arizona in 1939. And, she raised a very beautiful family, near South Mountain, grew up in Phoenix. And so there's just something about the desert landscape. And so when I hear about there may be some rain coming, when I think about my favorite restaurants, Rito, shout out. Everybody knows I love Rito. So if you're in Phoenix,
a burrito.
Yes, Garfield and/or The Crown. I love y'all. Phoenix is home. It's home, and it's a diverse place that is definitely changed over time, but it's who I am. And so it shows in everything that I do.
And I remember like when we got to talk, like right after, the Facebook stuff, that, that I was like, I'm meeting a real Phoenician, like that was so wild to me because of course, yes, there are people who are born in Phoenix, right? I have a child who's born in Phoenix, but I think of this as, not I think, but it is a commuter state, right? We receive a lot of folks from different states, California, anyway, lots of various places because of the weather and also because of our sports background or we are conducive to sports. So we host, help me here. What do we host? We host all of the
everything.
What's that?
Almost everything. Super Bowl, every other.
I was thinking baseball though, so that we do, what is it? Training? There we go. I was like, this word is not coming. Y'all know that I don't.
Florida or Arizona. So are the two spring training leagues.
Exactly. So anyway, the point is that we just get a lot of transplants, right? We have what we call here snowbirds, right? So anyway, people who come to get away from the snow, and so they come during our good weather months and leave when it's hot. So, okay. That's just nostalgia. That's just our connection. More than the fact that we like both rocked pink and glasses, right? Without having this memo transferred between us. So, all right. So, but let's get into kind of what people are maybe here to listen to, but also really kind of eager to receive information about both COVID-19, right, and our general theme of how this is impacting people in their mental health, right, as families go back into schools potentially or are being homeschooled, right, or choosing to homeschool their children, but then managing that. So get us started. Where do you even want to start with that?
No, it's a difficult one. I think where we can start is just by acknowledging the impact that this has had. And so as of today, the United States is close to 4.9 million cases of COVID-19 within the US. We're approaching 5 million cases, of which we are also at 160,000 deaths of COVID-19. And so I think what has been most interesting to navigate from the perspective of understanding kind of the etiology component. And so this is like, is this just like the flu? No, this is not just like the flu. Estimates for 2018, 2009 flu season were at about 32 million deaths. We are currently starting the 8th month of the year, but our first deaths were in February, end of February, and we're already at 160,000. And so the gravity of this is so much larger and so much bigger, taxing the infrastructure of our healthcare systems, taxing our mental health, which we will talk a lot about as well, and changing all of our perspectives. I think all of us are going through a process of navigating this space that is foreign to most. I will say it was interesting. I just read a story here in Washington, D.C. Of local friend whose great aunt just turned 105, meaning that she had experienced the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 to 1919. So this is a once in 100-year event, of which very few people have experienced this.
And it's so perfect too that you use that example, because I remember walking. I teach at a local community college in March, right when we had all kind of retreated to our homes. I had to go back onto campus to retrieve some materials, right, to teach. So anyway, my daughter went with me. And I told her, I was like, I'm never going to experience something like this again, right? I'm 41. I was like, but you will, and you're going to potentially experience this again when you're a grandmother, right? And so this is something that happens every 100 years, right? And again, the Spanish flu, right, is that comparison. That also makes me think of too, I'm so interested in the elders' perspective. So I'm so glad that you brought up your granny, who I had the pleasure of meeting too. Like, that's who I want to know. And early on, who I kind of talked to, of like, how do you make sense of this, right? What does this connect to, right? So have you had any conversations with elders or even older epidemiologists, more senior epidemiologists, about their perspective or their take on this, on COVID-19?
No, I think that's really interesting. I think because of how long ago it was that we truly had a pandemic of this proportion, many of us are still, regardless of age, regardless of how long we've been doing this, kind of shaking our heads like, wow. I think that's what we continue to see, or what I continue to see when I'm navigating and talking to friends who, and to be clear, like, I primarily have worked in infectious disease, HIV, STI, other communicable diseases of which we either have treatment and or cures for. Treatment for HIV and or, back for Hep C, we now have a cure, as well as our STIs that are curable as well. And so this is just a moment where we get together and say, wait, are we in a pandemic? And these are the professionals. These are people who are navigating it every single day, and it's still surreal. It's still very surreal.
And what's the question? I heard the question there of professionals questioning, are we in a pandemic? So what brings doubt?
I think so. And thank you for clarifying that. It's not a question of whether or not we're in a pandemic. We're in a pandemic. The question is, how did we get here? And how did this happen in our lifetime? And so when you think about Spanish flu or Spanish influenza, you really think of like, well, this is 2020. We have so much knowledge. We are able to navigate so many different spaces and technology and bioinformatics, and how did we get here? And to be honest, I think most of us know how we got here. We had a failed implementation of a response to what we knew to be a possibly dangerous coronavirus. And so that's how we got here. And I think that's more so what we're questioning than, is this real? We know this is real. We know the deaths are real. We know that families are suffering. We know that lives are touched and that this is painful for a lot of people. But how, in the United States, we have 5 million. The second country after us is Brazil, another place that I love. My opinion on the other side, I love Brazil. I hope all are well in Brazil, down south, but they are just approaching 3 million cases. And so how did we as a world and as a nation get to this space?
Yeah, I won't be able to mess with you if you speak Portuguese. I'll understand a little bit, but I can't respond. I have 3 languages, but Portuguese is not one of them. Yes, and so, and I wouldn't expect anything less from you besides just to be real, right? And to like call it out, because I'm sure that the question is, did it have to be this bad? I feel like that is actually the origin of the question, that you're saying that professionals are the reason why they're posing the question that you've stated, right? And I think we know that, no, it didn't have to be that bad, because anyone with like a little bit of common sense and ability to strategize and plan, like what parents and teachers do all the time, knows like, hey, you look down the road, right? You look down the road for potential issues, and then you create a plan, right, to address them.
Right. And there are plans in place. And I think another thing is that other countries around the world have dealt with endemic influenzas and or coronavirus respiratory viruses for quite some time. So this is not the first time in our lifetime that we've had one in other regions. We have just done a better job of either isolating it into certain locales around the globe. This one we knew was spreading pretty fast, and it was occurring way before we even had our first death. And so I think that's what is more of the taking a step back, that how did we go from there to here? And then now we've had, both a, pretty much close to lockdown of the country in March, April-ish for most places, to now a resurgence where our numbers got even higher than they were back in April. And so that's another thing that we're all kind of shaking our heads is, what is it that we can do?
Yeah, because I mean, it's like I feel like I need to say we had a lockdown, but we've had, especially here in Arizona. I mean, because your family is still here, lockdowns that were too short. That were and people probably have opinions about that, but yeah, I really don't care. I shouldn't be that strong, but I don't have room. That's probably a nicer way to say. I don't have room for the opinion that we should have opened sooner, we shouldn't be locked down at all, right? Because it is real. And no, although it doesn't impact all of us at the same level, the people who it does impact and the most severely need our protection, right? And so that communal or lack of communal response is actually what really bothers me. And you and I were talking, I have not been perfect. I leave my house maybe twice a week, right? I go get groceries and things like that. But I am doing my very best to respect this pandemic and respect the rules, because I'm not afraid that I'm specifically going to get sick. I don't want to harm other people.
Right.
And I really do feel our Americanism, our individualism is working against us.
It's our individualism, and then I'm also going to keep it real. It's also our institutional racism. We have to go there. And so when you mentioned it's impacting some people more than others, it's disproportionately impacting Black and Latinx and Indigenous people across the United States of America. That's heavy on my heart every day, knowing who's being impacted, knowing family members of my own who have passed away in Arizona. And so navigating this space, yes, the virus itself is indiscriminate in regards to the transmission. But when we talk about the systematic issues that we face, and we'll even talk more about it as we talk about education and schools, this is not affecting everyone equally, whether or not it's the workforce and what we see in our unemployment numbers right now, and or the lockdown in general and who had access to mental health prior or not. This has been disproportionately affecting, people who were already navigating rough waters.
Trey, I'm smiling because actually I just got a glimpse or a memory of what it is to actually be sitting in grad school, sitting alongside you in a class, So it's this, like what you said, the allyship and the camaraderie, like knowing that your peer is sitting next to you and you're just like, oh, thank you for staying. Like, thank you, and creating that trust of like giving life. It's trust, but it's when you are not used to being represented in a classroom, right? When you are the only you and you feel that you see something that other people don't see, it is challenging to bring that up in public space. And you question, not everyone, but you question whether or not you are right or wrong. And so then when you just takes one, right, that's essentially like the kind of people who are activists and organizers. It just takes one person to stand with you, and then you can do it. Then you can stand against a whole army. So anyway, so that was just the moment that I had of just like, I just remember what it felt like to be in school with you, because you were always, right, both of us, we had our little crew, right? There were several of us, right? I'm missing Liza right now.
I know.
There were several of us that we knew we were going to bring this question, right? Of like, hold on, who is this impacting more, or what is the perspective, right, from those who are generally marginalized? And yes, it is impacting. So can you break that down from your perspective, and then I'll offer, whatever I think might need to be added. Why is it impacting these certain communities much more, and bring in the institutional piece from a medical perspective?
Well, I think, health inequality, just like income inequality, has been very real for public health professionals for a very long time. We know that chronic disease disproportionately affects people of color more so than their counterparts. We know that access to fresh fruits and vegetables, grocery stores, ability to go on a jog at night in your neighborhood, all of those components impact your health. And so those are things that often may be taken for granted, the ability to have a grocery store to buy fresh fruit, and how that then down the road impacts how whether or not you may acquire a chronic disease. It's hard. It's hard to navigate, and those are all tied. And I wish I had a simpler answer. I mean, we could probably talk about this, for forever. But I mean, the core root of what we do in public health, for me at least, is that public means all. It means everyone, and we must understand the social determinants of health. They are the key to unlocking things not only from chronic disease to a pandemic, but also things that I've specialized for so long, like HIV. That these are things that systematically have been working against groups of people for a very long time. Access to healthcare, disproportionate numbers of those who were prior to and even still after the Affordable Care Act are Black, Latinx, and Indigenous people. And so, how do we account for that? And so, there's some reckoning that we're doing as a country as well as we navigate this pandemic.
And and those communities, right, are the individuals who are on the front lines, right, who we are now categorizing as essential workers, right, but are maybe not regarded that way, are certainly not being paid and compensated for the risk that they're experiencing, right, and living. um I'm trying to decide, like, between two trains here, of conversation. So let me go on this one. So the piece that I think about with the institutionalized aspects, right, of healthcare, and this chronic disease, right, this term that, like, we hear, and we understand that chronic means long time, ongoing, right? Things that are chronic, right? Diabetes, right? Hypertension, right? These things that you live with, and then also that maybe we potentially inherit. Our individualistic view of that, what I put, the only thing that controls my health is what I put in my mouth, and exercising or not exercising. Although true, yes, you want to change your life, you want to get healthy, you can absolutely change it, but it does not take away from all the things that you said: your access to healthcare, your access to education and information. The biggest one for me, it does not take away from the DNA, the neural pathways, that stress reaction. Stress increases dis-ease in your body. I can't say it more plainly, right? And so if dis-ease is exacerbated, is worsened, right, because of being Black, Brown, Indigenous, LGBTQ, whatever marginalized group you're a part of, when a disease or a disorder comes in, you don't have the defenses. Not only you and your people don't have the defenses, or as many defenses as someone else. And I'm, like, getting super passionate about that because I remember feeling that way and having this recognition in graduate school. So I was in graduate school at two different points. I started my PhD at USC, right? And then ended up kind of transferring over, and then came to Arizona State University. So anyway, I remember being at USC, reading kind of information about health disparities, a lot of it related to psychology. We didn't have the neuroscience then to understand, right, DNA, telomeres, right, neural pathways, to know that the reaction that we have to stress is so important and not discussed sufficiently enough to understand why we are predisposed to certain diseases that have a stress component to them.
Right. And I mean, that even goes into now COVID in regards to our immune response. And, to be completely honest, for me, I know my body really well. I am blessed enough to have access to care. I have a PCP that I love that I can contact at any given time. Yet and still, I know the physiological change in my body when I am super stressed. I know when I am stressed about family or work or relationships, what it physically does to my body, whether or not it be weight gain, cortisol, like I can feel it running through my body and I can notice all of those differences just even despite. And so for myself, knowing that, I only put myself or try to look through the lens of others to understand when you're going through these types of stressful things, whether or not it's the cops pulling you over, navigating walking in your neighborhood, navigating stressful work environments with coworkers who may or may not have, you know, microaggressions towards you. All of those things bring this kind of stress that doesn't leave you when you leave that particular space and moment in your life.
Absolutely. And so, and I want to like, this is my jam. Like as far as like one of the things that I enjoy teaching, right? I want people to understand. So when your stress level is high, you produce certain hormones, cortisol being one of the primary ones, right? When your cortisol level is high, your stress level is high, your body is going to be in this kind of chronic fight or flight. And so the way that our bodies are built is, okay, if I have to fight and flight, that means that I also need to hang on to the calories. I need to hang on to the fat because I don't know when I'm going to eat again, right? That's that hindbrain. That's that old way that we survived and needed to survive. So no, we don't need that anymore, but our brain doesn't know that, right? It's called anyway, it doesn't matter. It's that amygdala hijack, right? So, but anyway, so that is what happens, and that's what we're talking about. So it also, if it doesn't matter that we're not in caveman days, because our brain responds that way, the threat doesn't matter either. So if it is an interaction with police, if it is an interaction with, kind of a microaggressive situation, right, where we feel offended or threatened, right, because of a part of our identity, that stress level is heightened. And then what do? We choose sugar. We choose things we cope in ways that we should not. We choose alcohol. We do all these things, right? There are more F's than fight and flight, and maybe I'll get there in this conversation.
Oh,
But,
no.
right? But we do that, and then because we're already predisposed, because we already have genes, right, that make it so that we have that increased stress level, we continue to kind of pick up or acquire these diseases more easily, and then we pass on those responses to our children. Do you have anything to add to that explanation?
I'll I'll just say epigenetics, and that's a fancy term, but like when you say we pass on those genes, we are clearly learning through science that we do in fact pass on many of these stress related experiences that we have in our lives to our young people and our children. And so navigating 400 years of oppression, navigating the Trail of Tears, navigating so many injustices that have occurred in our country, it correlates with the groups that we're talking about today that are disproportionately affected with COVID-19.
Yeah, and I think both of us are passionate about it because when some people don't understand why we are still having the conversation today of 400 years ago, this is the reason why, right? COVID will show you why, because when we see, right, different communities being impacted at differential levels, it is because of the history, right? Yeah. Let's jump into, so I want to bring in this question that is coming from audience members, and I haven't shared this, but if y'all want to bring in some questions, right, I'm attending to the feed on the NPU screen. So one of the questions is, how will all of these changes from all this newness, right, this new lifestyle affect our brains? And I think that's a good segue into the mental health response that you're noticing, right, as a counselor.
Yeah, I affect our brains. I think that is it's important, And so I don't want to, discard it, but I think part of it is the immediate right now. And so when I think of what it does to our brains immediately versus over time, I think what we really need to do in our time right now is to assess what it's doing to us today. Um, Whether or not it be clients, friends, family members, I'm having the same conversation over and over again about how to navigate through life. And I think one thing that has been pervasive is the messaging about what we're doing. I know here in the District of Columbia, it's every press conference is the new normal, be careful about the new normal, adjust to the new normal. And I think for me, it's really about recalibration. It's about taking that step back, just like what we did prior to starting the show, taking that deep breath and assessing all of the things in our lives right now. I'm doing the exact same thing, from my profession to my family to my friends to my love life, all of it. And the pandemic has maybe forced many of us to do that, and look at ourselves in ways that we haven't. But now's the time to do it. Now's the time to do it. And I think that as we move forward, how we calibrate our lives are going to impact these decisions that we make regarding our work, regarding our children, regarding our families and communities. Not to go on another tirade, but it's just, today the jobs numbers came out. And so unemployment dropped from 11.5, I believe, to 10.2%. Nationally, still higher than we experienced in the Great Recession. Once again, still, and unfortunately, I couldn't get the numbers for Latinx persons, but the numbers are still disproportionately high for all of the groups that we just mentioned. And so there's a stress on work for those who are now not working due to the pandemic. And then there's a stress for those who are actually working in the pandemic. And so we have two groups of people. I can sit here being blessed and working from home in the safety of my home and choosing when I leave the house, choosing when I go to the grocery store. Not everyone has that choice. And that is very critical for us all to understand. And I want to let everyone know who's watching that that's where my heart is right now. It's about those who we must protect. And so when we really talk about how we make these decisions to move forward, whether or not it be school, they're very tough decisions. But it's not a single decision. It's not one singular decision. It's how do we recalibrate all of these things in our lives? And they're going to be hard.
And it's funny, I think about individual differences. And so, yeah, what that means, right, is that we all are individuals. Of course, there's a range, right? If there's a range in personality, if there's a range in what kind of a lover and friend you are, if there's a range in how much you like ice cream, right? It doesn't matter what it is, there's always a range. And I know that. But this pandemic and dealing with my students, dealing with just people's experiences, it has reinforced for me those individual differences within the acceptable range. But these individual differences are so correlated to, like you said, the life you are privileged or allowed to live in this pandemic, right? Or not, and that even goes back to our earlier conversation of like, that's the concern. The concern is that the people who have some of the people that have the most stress are the ones who don't have the choice to do what I'm doing. And I'll be super honest. I'm not living my best life in the pandemic, but I'm living a really good life, like you said, of self-reflection, of different work opportunities. Like that's why I'm on the show, right? That's why you're on the show, like of different professional opportunities, right? Because there's a little niche that my education allows me to fill. But that is not everyone's experience. And I'm often, again, seeing things smacked in the face with that of like, oh man, like, is what I'm delivering, is it fitting everybody's needs? And that's so challenging right now.
No, it is. And I think, navigating your individual differences and putting those together with, things that you mentioned earlier on in the show about how our individualism is showing in the US and us maybe really needing to come back to our communities and finding out who those communities are, and really realigning and once again recalibrating with community and what that means. Because I think out of all this, I mean, there are memes about how we're navigating and, you know, what July is going to look like, what August is going to look like. We kind of laugh because we've been in this Groundhog's Day, many of us feeling day to day. But I would say the one that probably touched me the most was one that basically said, a mother who chooses to homeschool is a good mother. A mother who chooses to send their child to school is a good mother. And a mother who chooses to say, F all this is a good mother. And that's where we don't get to make these decisions, you know, from the outside, but it's really your community and how you navigate and who you connect with. Because there are ways to safely navigate this pandemic. We can still gather. No one's saying that we should not gather. It's access to testing to understand whether or not you may be asymptomatic and or possibly a carrier to possibly pass it on to someone else. But we still need that interaction. And I think that it's very different. I think it's really hard to give this blatant, you know, endorsement for one thing or another, given where everyone local epidemics are, you know, for COVID. But there are ways to navigate, still creating community with your friends and family to help support you and or to support others through all of this.
Yeah, and from that mental health perspective, right, the isolation and the lack of social connection or the different types of social connections that we're having to cultivate or rely on is challenging, right? Because we're human beings are not meant to be alone, right? Our need to connect and that belongingness is basically one of the things that differentiates us, right, from animals, right? So, but I'm aware of kind of time, and I really want to know.
As at it.
I know, you already knew this was going to happen. Because this is what it is when we talk. And actually, there's a part I'm not hitting that we'll see if we get there. But let me ask you this question first. So what are your recommendations? What are your recommendations for parents and families and educators, right? As some people are being, I don't want to say forced, that's too strong, don't have as much choice as they wish they could have for a variety of reasons to be schooled in the way that they want to. What are your recommendations for both physical health, like biological health, and also mental health?
So I think for physical health, I think all of us, it's very hard once again, given all of the information that's out there. And so if I were just to say two things, wash your hands and wear a mask. Please wear a mask. I don't care where you are in the country right now watching this, where you are in the world watching this. Please wear a mask when outdoors and outside of your familial home or community. Be careful about touching your face. Be careful about social distancing still. We can still navigate and go out into community and even if need be have to go to work environments, but do your best to take these like very basic precautions. From a mental health perspective, I think it's really still going back to find your resources, center yourself around community, whatever that looks like. And I understand that everyone doesn't have community in the same way as well. And so it's easy for me to say find community when I have friends across the world that I can call and talk to at any given time, right? And so sometimes that community may be even inward within yourself to find whatever strength that is that you need in order to navigate this space. And so I would suggest making a list of the people and things that are critical for you at this juncture in time, and maybe modifying it week by week, month by month, as we slowly navigate this space, because it's not going away anytime soon. A vaccine, I'm glad to hear that we're in phase 3 trials for a vaccine, but the likelihood of push out for that is still on the horizon. And so we're going to have to navigate. And so I would say those are the main things for physical and mental health that are critical, is really centering oneself around community. I myself wouldn't be here or able to navigate or talk to you all right now if it weren't for community.
And I would say like that you and I also are a part of that community, those concentric circles. If you think about it, that like we all have our interior circles, our people, it's who you're talking to on the daily, right? But even I think for some people that has probably changed. And then we have these other circles that get a little bit wider, right? I think it's okay to renegotiate those circles, redraw those circles, and move people in and out of those various circles, not because you care any less or care any more, right? Or you've learned about a certain lack of connection, because right now we should be responding based off of need and who has capacity, and people have different needs and capacities, right? And I think for those of us, excuse me, I inhaled too deeply. Okay. For those of us that, where was I going? For those of us that are noticing that we don't have the community that we want, that is where even that's still a good thing to kind of get that list, that prioritization, I can say it, prioritization list, right, of the changes that we want to make. And no, I can't maybe go build community right now in the middle of the pandemic, but I sure can seek out virtual support groups. I sure can seek out to remedy some of the relationships that are available to me. If I can't do that, I sure can at least write a list of what are my areas of growth. What books am I going to start reading? What podcasts am I going to start listening to? Because this has been the beauty, and I'll go so far as to say the blessing of the pandemic are shows like these. And I'm not gassing myself up. I just mean like the fact that information is so available right now. For those, again, for those who have internet access, reliable internet access, but and that's not everyone, right? But there is a greater accessibility to information now.
There is, and I would also, for those who do have access, once again, I would challenge to continue to think outside the box. And so this is a reimagining. And so I can already pinpoint the best day that I've had in the pandemic. The best day that I've had in the pandemic was with one of my best friends, also from Arizona, Leonardo Sevilla. He's actually heading back to Arizona to see his parents in Yuma. I believe on Sunday, and we've had this conversation back and forth as just friends, buddies. Like, we're like, oh my God, I'm going to see my parents, and I'm like, you've got to go get tested before you go, Leo, if you can. And sorry to diverge, my bestie came into my head, and going back to Arizona. But our best day was he sent me a list of foods, ingredients to get, and we just cooked together. And it felt like I was there. It felt like I was with him, and I was in my kitchen, and he was in his. He's in North Carolina now, and I sat there, and we were just. I mean, next thing you know, hours go by. We have a cocktail. We're cooking, some yummy Arizona style Sonoran Mexican food, and it was probably the best day that I've had in connecting. It was different than just being on the phone with someone, to visually be there and also to be doing an activity where there was an end goal. And so I would challenge those to do that, and not only to do it for self. And so that's another thing I wanted to hit on, is that when we look at the mental health component, it's not just self, it's family unit, it's children, it's everyone, because we're all, as you said, dealing with this individually. And so we may have to put the mask on ourselves first for oxygen, for the parents out there, to do that in order to then navigate the space that your young people and your young children are navigating.
Absolutely. And it's such a beautiful example. And I've done that. I talk a lot often about our collective. In fact, you and Carmen went to high school together. But anyway, there's so many beautiful connections between like all the guests that I've brought on. But through the collective, we often do that, right? In fact, we will do that again tomorrow, right? We're having this virtual retreat across 3 different days. And one of the things that Carmen did was she sent us all the same ingredients so that we were making the same food. And so that's a way for us to kind of connect, share story around it. And absolutely, I feel like a broken record when I'm on the morning show in Spanish, but I'm always talking about how this is such an opportunity. And I am such an optimistic person. I can fantasize intellectually about all the ways that I want the world to be and believe it. That's who I am. We need people like me, and then I need the realist to be like, okay, but how are you going to execute it? And I actually can do that too. But anyway, it's important. Like I would hate it. To me, the pandemic's already awful. It would be exceptionally worse if when we walk out of this, it's business as usual and nothing changes, because we have had the opportunity to kind of redefine and restructure so many systems. And we do not have time to get into a spiritual conversation, but the fact that these systems are falling, right? Atira, one of our friends, was on the show talking about the social shifts. What she said was, the pandemic has softened us and allowed us to hear, right? And then the world's going to do what the world's going to do. The universe is going to do what it's going to do. And it's like, oh, okay, guess what? And you're also going to look at all of these structures that are going to fall and fall quickly and in really significant ways that are going to force us to redefine them. I think the worst thing we could do is go backwards, because then for me, spiritually, that means we're going to have to learn another difficult lesson.
Mm. No, I'm 100% aligned with all that. I think, you know, I'm really hoping that the viewers are at least getting some takeaways. And the one thing is to understand and to be gentle and kind with oneself, because these decisions are not easy. Deciding between work and your child going to school is not an easy decision. Um, it's a decision that is, in many ways, an example of how difficult and how many structures we have up that some may need to fail, right? But in the moment right now, we can't wait for them to fail. There's a decision. My kid's going to start school, or they're not offering virtual learning. What do I do? I can't take off work. What do I do? I need to feed my family. What do I do? And I think that's why I've been so, you know, centered around community, because it's so hard for any one of us to do it all by ourselves, or pair, you know, spouses to do it all by themselves, significant others. It's hard. And so when we talk about the village, now it's time to make sure that we connect to the village. And we may have been disconnected for some time. You know, I think about people who I talk to today more often. You know, my other bestie, Dante, I'm like, oh my God, this has allowed us to talk every day. we talk on the phone every single day. And it's amazing to have that energy and to speak with him, and what it does for my spirit in regards to navigating work, navigating hard decisions, you know, on a day-to-day basis. And so this is not a one size fits all. This is, you know, I'm giving examples that have worked for me, but I do think that regardless of where we're at, it's time to, you know, center oneself and once again recalibrate all of these things in our lives, in order to move forward in a difficult time.
And to redefine that village too, and that's what you're saying. I also kind of between what you're saying and I'm saying are those circles, right? So we can't, you know, you and I, we are not near our biological. What's that?
I said I want to be there, but we.
But yeah, we're not near our biological folks, right? You and I have family that we've cultivated, created in the states in which we live. But so that creating community within the villages or the circles that you otherwise don't look at, because I think so many times when we talk about our village and our community, it's of chosen people. But right now we're having to kind of make some community of who's around us, and that's a piece of community that like a structural aspect of community that actually potentially needs to fall, that it's only the people who we get along with, right? That's not working for us right now.
No, I mean, that one hit hard for me.
I heard, I was like, damn.
Like in regards to like truly processing and navigating that space. And I think, you know, living so far away from home in Arizona, and most of my family members for now a majority of my adult life now, I've had to continue to do that. But I think the one key thing that you said though is even people we don't get along with. And so I think right now, I don't care what your political affiliation is right now. I can utilize community in ways to navigate moving our country forward, moving my community here in Washington, D.C. For example, I am a proud Washingtonian, for sure. That is another piece of my identity. I love Washington, D.C. We were talking about it earlier. Like, I like to hop around. I've lived in a lot of cities, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost been 8 years. And Andali was like, that's a long time for you. That says something.
Oh.
So that means Washington, D.C. is working for me. And so the community, whether or not it be examples of supporting Black businesses throughout the protests that occurred throughout the city, whether or not it be local businesses that um, just make DC special to me, and supporting them. Once again, just getting takeout. That's another component. It's feeding jobs. It's allowing people to go to work. And so that in and of itself is building community to me, and having those brief moments when we just look at one another, in the street, or me running on the mall, knowing that, we're in this together. This is not the DC that we normally live in, with tourists and, believe it or not, the Capitol and in Congress buildings are pretty empty right now. It's not typical, but we're making it together. And so that's also a space, regardless of, once again, political affiliation, race, gender, sexual orientation, all of that. It's just, we're navigating a rough time.
And, we're gonna wrap up here, but I would say that empower you all, right, and emblazon you all with that organizing spirit of that, like, we have so much power right now, and the because we're alone, we think we don't have power, but everybody's alone. So if everybody's alone, and if various folks of us kind of group together and present a certain solution, right, to our school districts, present a certain solution to our government, right, there is a listening ear, not in all spaces. I'm not delusional, right? But some people can listen. It's the time for us to push certain envelopes. And if we don't ask, and if we fall into the illusion of how alone we are and how separate we are, and don't see the communal nature or the connectiveness that we have to folks, we're going to miss some really amazing opportunities. We're over time. So everyone, it's like this time flies, right? We definitely have to do part 2. Trey, I miss you so much. Like, everybody can tell, right? I'm just like, da, 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 da. I miss you. I love you. I cannot wait until either I can go to DC or you can come here. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for seeing me, like, throughout so many times. You know what I appreciate about you the most? That the closeness and the hominess and the love never goes away, despite miles of distance, despite, time of not speaking. And, like, you always give me your heart to connect to. And I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. I love you to pieces.
All right, everyone. Sorry, I'm dirty. Okay, which is like so a thing. Anyway, we will see you next week. I got to run out of here. I encourage you all to follow the National Parents Union, right, to connect with us. We will provide your information, potentially your ways that people can connect to you in the comment section in the chat, if that works.
That works.
Okay. Have a beautiful, wonderful weekend. Connect, expand those circles, and we'll see you in a week.
Love, everybody.